because of their technology, they are able to feed, clothe, house, and transport themselves equally and with no effort.
Hey,
How you doing?
good.
Good.
We're back.
Yeah. It's been a while.
I know, it's been a long time.
It's okay. Real life. Real life gets in the way.
Yes, it does. All right, so what do you got for me?
Yeah, it's just finding stuff here and there. This snippet is just something I thought would fit really good in with our show and the stuff we've been getting into. This is a brief thing from the 1976 book Cosmic Trigger. And it's called The Queen of Space.
Okay.
A few weeks after my meeting with Dr. Leary at Millbrook, my family had our first UFO experience. We were living in northern New Jersey, and I was commuting daily to my job at Fact magazine. Our house was at the bottom of a hill, and one Saturday morning while I was home, the kids came running in to tell me that a flying saucer had just landed up near the top of the hill. I went to the backyard to find a neighboring family equally excited. Altogether, 6 adults, the author and his wife, plus 4 from the neighboring clan, which was Appalachian and huge. Together with 7 children, ours and theirs, had seen what looked like a silvery, saucer-shaped craft land. Everybody was taking turns looking at the landing site through a pair of binoculars. When it was my turn, I saw what looked like a Bucky Fuller geodesic dome, where none had been before, and no human or humanoid figures. Others saw a more saucer-shaped craft, and some saw humanoids in silver costumes.
Interesting.
Yeah. Then whatever it was, took off. It definitely was not a geodesic dome. Why am I saying zone? Watching it take off, I decided it was probably only a helicopter. That afternoon, my son Graham encountered an in quotes extraterrestrial in the woods behind our house at the foot of the hill. She was a female with silvery skin, and she told Graham, he was 5 at the time, that he should become a physicist when he grew up. Professor Jacques Vallée, who has analyzed all such contact stories that have occurred since 1890 with a computer to find statistical patterns, informs us that this is drearily typical. The majority of child contactees, Vallée had discovered, report female extraterrestrials. The majority of adults report males in 2 standard types, small green men or giant blue men. In fact, Dr. Vallée has found 44 parallels, similarities of image, word, and detail between the average experience of child contactees and the miracles attributed to the Blessed Virgin Mary in Catholic countries. Quote, the UFO and the BVM, Blessed Virgin Mary, he has said, only half-jokingly, seem to be the same phenomenon. The lady most often appears to children, whether she comes in a spaceship or from heaven. She is accompanied by flashing white lights, usually, and at her best, she is capable of suspending the laws of physics in clear view or telepathically shared hallucinations of huge crowds.
Mm.
I have asked Graham, who is now studying to be a physicist in accord with the lady's urging, to retell the tale again to check the accuracy of my memory. Graham especially emphasized the odd silvery costumes of the humanoid figures seen on the mountain before the lady appeared. An old friend, Marilyn Pooler of Las Vegas, who was living in that part of New Jersey at the same time in 1964, coincidentally arrived to visit us in Berkeley 2 days after the above account was written.
Mm.
Quite spontaneously, with no knowledge of Graham's experience, she told of 2 seeming extraterrestrials she had seen about the same time in 1964, late summer, approximately 30 miles from our home.
Mm.
She was one of the many contactees who suffered amnesia and can only recall seeing the critters without further details. 20 minutes later, she awakened as if from a trance, and they were gone. Both wore silver uniforms. Catholics now call the Blessed Virgin Mary Our Lady of Space. She is, of course, another archetype from Jung's collective unconscious and was around long before Christianity. The Egyptians
Right.
called her Nuit and connected her specifically with the star Sirius. But depictions of her go back at least to cave statues dated 30,000 BC. Robert Graves, in his famous and highly controversial book, The White Goddess, tried to prove that the worship of her was humanity's oldest religion and originally involved the use of the psychedelic mushroom Amanita muscaria.
Mm-hmm.
American Indian shamans knew her too and called her Peyote Woman. She is the female version of Mescalita. She also appears, I love this, she also appears, amusingly enough, in The Wizard of Oz as the Bubble Witch.
Glenda, the good witch.
Yeah, in the film of that novel, each of her appearances begins with a bright silvery globe descending from the sky, after which she appears where the globe lands. This is the way child contactees generally report her, according to Vallée. And Silvery Globe was also around in some of her miracles under the guise of the BVM at Lourdes and Fatima.
Mm-hmm.
In one of her miracles at Fatima, she caused the sun to plunge directly toward Earth in the shared experience or hallucination of over 100,000 witnesses. If you believe the sun really did plunge toward the Earth, you are naive in my estimation. But if you accept that 100,000 persons can telepathically share the same hallucination, you must answer the big question, or perhaps I should call it the wig question. How much of consensus reality is similarly created?
Mm.
And that's Robert Anton Wilson's Cosmic Trigger, one of my favorite books of all time.
Yes. That's fascinating. That is. That really is. That's interesting.
Yeah, it takes on I had to go revisit it, especially since we've been doing the show and we've been coming back to this.
It keeps coming up.
The similarities with all the phenomenon,
right.
you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Love that.
Yeah. So what you got?
I was, because everyone probably knows we've been gone for a while, so I was going with some stuff I had from probably like 2 months ago when we were getting ready for an episode. Haunted by the Things You Love is the name of the book, and it's by John Zaffis and Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Yeah.
And it's about cursed objects. And I found this one it's kind of comical. I'm not going to read it the way it's written, just because it's written like a story, and I just kind of want to go over the account, like what happened, what they said happened. But it's about cursed jewelry. Okay. So there's this guy named Nathan, and he's going to break up with his fiance because he's found out that she's a witch, and for some reason that just he can't do that, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of comical, but and he feels like he's justified because he feels like her behavior's changed and she's become unstable and unpredictable, and he doesn't understand her religion, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And so he breaks up with her. How does that go? Sorry about that. Because it goes into the story. They wrote it like him going through it in his head, like he's gonna break up with her.
Yeah.
So he breaks up with her. When he arrives to the condo to do this, she already has candles. There's candles lit all over the place, right? So he's probably freaking out or whatever, right? And he gives her a hug and a kiss, and she, I guess, was about to tell him what she had planned for the evening, whatever that was, with all the candles. But
Yeah.
and he tells her why he's there, and she cries and she yells, which is quite normal if something like that happens, right? I think.
Yeah.
And he lies to her. She asks why, and he lies and stuff. And then finally he tells her it's because their outlooks on life are different and he doesn't think it's going to work out. And she's like, okay. So she removes her engagement ring and she throws it at him, right? And he picks it up and he tells her she can keep it, sell it, whatever. I mean, you know, but she doesn't want to take it.
Yeah.
And he fumbles into his pocket because he is returning, like, apparently she had bought him a bunch of jewelry when they were dating and stuff, right? So he returns some rings and stuff, and she takes them in her hand and she holds them and she's really quiet for a minute. And then
Yeah.
she gives them back to him and puts them in his hand and tells him that they're meant for him, that he should keep them, right?
Right.
So he does, and they break up and whatever, right? So life goes on. Months go by. He meets another woman and falls in love, and her name's Nikki, which they probably changed names anyway, but she's younger than him. I don't know why I did. I think some of the things are funny. So now he's gonna marry Nikki, right?
Yeah.
The next girl. And she wants a fairy tale wedding. So like they put together this like elaborate wedding, her family does, right? And they get married and everything's beautiful and perfect, and you know, this big honeymoon. And they get to the honeymoon portion of the wedding day and he can't perform, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's, you know, we'll do it later. Sorry, it's okay. You had too much champagne. They actually said that. But so he can't perform, okay?
Yeah.
And not only that, but then when they do go to sleep, she wakes up like get off of me, like yelling at him. And he's like, "What are you talking about? I'm asleep." And she said something was like hitting on her and scratching her and pulling her hair, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, I was asleep, right?
Yeah.
Well, this keeps happening. She keeps getting attacked, like when they're sleeping.
Yeah.
She keeps experiencing someone scratching at her or hitting her or pulling her hair, stuff like that. And he continues not to be able to perform sexually. So, all right.
Yeah.
And so this goes on, and it's like, you know, this was supposed to be like a happy beginning, and it keeps getting worse. And then some other bad luck happens. I think she fell and sprained her ankle. Like this other stuff happens. And then he started getting attacked at night too when they were sleeping, and they would get scratches and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they at some point reach out to John Zaffis, and he looks into their case, and wait, I missed the good part. Sorry. He figures out that it's the jewelry that the ex witch gave him, and so they think that she cursed him so that he couldn't have happiness.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny and interesting, and I think John Zappis, which I think he does, he takes items for people and puts them in his museum or whatever. He puts them away for them, and so he did that with this person, and what he explained to them is the type of curse it was, like, because you have to remember the guy went for months or however long between girlfriends, and his life was like everything was normal, right?
Yeah.
But what John was saying was the curse didn't go into effect until you got married, until you married somebody else.
Oh, wow. And then it hits.
And then it kind of just started that night, it
like
just immediately went into effect.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. And I think things did get back to normal once the items were taken and John does whatever he does with them or whatever. But it's interesting, and it was kind of funny and interesting, like the bad boyfriend gets cursed and can't perform and all that stuff. But and I don't even know if you believe in curses, but it made me think of, for some reason, it made me think of this case, and you can find it on true crime podcasts. I know many of them have probably covered it, but there was this guy in Seattle, I believe, Christopher Case in Seattle, right? And it was this guy who was found dead, kneeling in his bathtub, his empty bathtub.
Yeah.
Right? Did you ever that? Have you heard that? And his apartment was covered in crucifixes and candles were lit, and there was salt everywhere. And what happened to this guy was he was in San Francisco on a business trip.
Yeah.
And he met this chick, right? And they kind of like really hit it off as far as they had unusual things in common. I think they were both like had a thing for ancient music.
Yeah.
Which is like rare to meet somebody that has the same interests like that. And so they really hit it off, and they were hanging out and everything. But she made sexual advances toward him, right?
Yeah.
And he, for whatever reason, like, we don't know why, I mean, for whatever reason, he rejected that. You know what I mean? Like, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but
Yeah, me either.
then after that, when he got home, he thought he said she was a witch, and he told his friends that he thought she was like attacking him, that she was cursing him.
Right.
And so whether she was not or whatever, this guy basically gave himself a heart attack, or he had a heart attack, he died. This young guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was so real to him, whether she's really doing it or whether it's just in his head, that he's like pouring salt around his whole apartment, and has crucifixes everywhere, and for some reason was in his bathtub and literally gave himself a heart attack and died. I just always remember that story.
It's fascinating to me. I had a good friend who intelligent person, not a bullshitter, and she told me a story about when she was younger, I think in her 20s, this guy broke her heart,
right,
and she cursed him, and
Okay.
kind of, I guess in her mind, it was more of like a catharsis, just a way of getting rid of
Oh, definitely.
the
Yeah.
anger and frustration. But the guy lost his job, broke his arm. It was
Oh,
getting
shit.
so bad
Right.
that she realized what she had done and did. I can't remember what she said she did to stop it. I'll
But
need
she,
this. But yeah, it finally stopped. But after this guy went through like months
hell.
of hell, and it's so interesting to me because it's like, is it coincidence? Is it true? And I also something that interests me about it is, okay, how does the materialist atheist come out of a curse? Like
Right.
would a guy who had no faith in it at all, would he be affected the same way? Or
Right.
would
How
it just
much?
would it just be the person who believes? I it's interesting to me, and I'd like to go
Yeah,
deeper with
I'm
that.
fascinated by it.
Yeah,
Because I do believe a lot of things require our belief,
belief, our
but I
participation.
kind of do think people can attack you that way,
Yeah,
whether you believe or not.
we
I mean,
I can't remember, did we, oh, we might have talked about it on a podcast before. It was a story where the guy, okay, this guy was um, invited, him and his wife were invited over to a couple's house for a dinner party, and the husband of the house they were going to was a ski instructor and had a really long day and was exhausted and forgot he had guests. And
uh-huh.
he came in and was irritated, but he put on a good face and said, "Oh, I'll just deal with it," and sat down.
Right.
But the guest said that he saw, and let me back up. This ski instructor guy was well versed in Navajo witchcraft,
Okay.
and was a student of it. And he said the guy was friendly enough, but he could sense the hostility, like fucking beaming off
Right.
of this guy, shooting into him. And he said it made him so sick he had to get up and walk outside. He said when he walked outside, the cold air hit him. He went boom, hit the ground, passed out.
Oh, wow.
This is what he says. He lived an entire lifetime as another man in the 18th century, from birth to old age to death, and went through this experience. He said it was in real time and everything. I lived an entire lifetime.
Right.
Woke back up, and they're all standing above him. Like, what happened? And he's like, God damn, how long have I been out here? They're like, 30 seconds.
Oh, shit.
And he said it was the
Like vivid.
he's convinced it was the hostility of this guy, even unconscious, that put him in that state. But why did he go slip into another life?
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, we'll read that one next time.
So it's like he got zapped with the hostility and that kind of like plunged
That
him
shot him
into
into the ether,
like
into
a
the
different, yeah.
yeah, and maybe it was just a past life. I don't know, but it's a
That's
great story.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So I do believe in curses. It's just
Yeah,
I don't completely understand them.
yeah, I don't either.
I
And
do believe
there
people can
honestly,
attack you. I do
most
believe people can attack you, but
I
I also
I do
believe
too, but
you can
most,
protect and dance your way out of it a little bit too if
right.
you can recognize,
I do too, but if everybody who claims to be a witch was a true witch, I would be worried, but I'm not. If you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. I do.
But yeah,
I do.
it's just another reason to not fuck people over and be polite.
That's right. Or get away from them if they're crazy.
Yeah. Do you want to do another cursed object?
Yeah, you got one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from that same book that I
Is
was just
it?
talking about. Yeah, this is
Oh.
from the book Psychedelic Shamanism by Jim DeCorn. This is an early 90s book from Loon Panics. And this is called The Voice. Of all the stories in this introduction, this is the one which is for me the most mysterious and has had the strongest impact on my life. On the morning of February 18th, 1979, I took LSD again after a gap of about 3 years. As I sit in my easy chair waiting for the effects of the drug to begin, I felt a sudden impulse to get up, go into the next room, and remove an antique Mexican machete from where it had been hanging on the wall for at least a decade. Like many items used only for decoration, this one had by now become so familiar as to be invisible. I don't recall having paid any real attention to it for years. Indeed, it was shamefully covered with dust. I'd purchased this machete in 1965 at the Toluca market outside of Mexico City. It was hanging in the back of a stall operated by a used tool and parts vendor who sold battered hammers, bent screwdrivers, grease-caked crescent wrenches, rusty motorcycle chains, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. The machete, obviously fairly old, I estimate early 20th century, around the time of the Mexican Revolution, and well used, with many nicks and scratches and a splintered handle. There is a quotes Dicho, D-I-C-H-O, or proverb engraved on the blade. Nada del mundo es vida por cumi ojos ven. Or whatever. In English, we would translate it, nothing in the world is true that meets the eye, or more freely, everything is an illusion.
Wow.
It's a curious saying. I've never thought of it as typically Mexican Catholic sentiment. If anything, it sounds Buddhist. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I wanted to hold this machete, and as the LSD began to alter my consciousness, I held it tighter and tighter. Like Peter's Tibetan cup, it was beginning to manifest the energies of a power object. Soon it felt like the machete was some kind of psychic lightning rod for forces to enter my body. At that point, I don't think I could have let go of it if I wanted to. Now, the drug was coming on strong, and I was suddenly very, very stoned. The machete vibrated with authority and seemed to pull me from my chair, across the room, and out the door into the yard, where I was forcibly thrown to my knees on the ground. For the first, and so far the only time in my life, I heard a distinctly clear voice speaking to me from within my own head. The voice was nothing that I could identify with as, quote, me, or even a portion of, quotes, me. It was totally other, with a capital O, and it asked a question. Do you take responsibility? I didn't really know what that meant. Take responsibility for what? Yet I knew that it was important to say yes. Taking responsibility was certainly a responsible thing to do, and I've always believed in being responsible, in quotes. So he answered yes. The energy level of the voice increased one full octave. Do you take responsibility? Sure, yes. I was deeply intoxicated and quite confused by the repetition of the question.
Right.
Now the numinous and power of the voice doubled again, becoming suddenly very, very scary. What was I dealing with here? Do you take responsibility? Yes, I take responsibility. I had no idea what I was taking responsibility for,
Right.
but I knew that I must be equal to it, whatever it was. Now we cross the line into, quote, something else. These goddamn acid trips. Why did I continue to do this to myself? I've said that so many times, by the way. Flashback replays of my second voyage into LSD terror. It was now nothing less than the voice of God demanding, do you take responsibility? I was no longer sure that I wanted that much responsibility, yet somehow I felt certain that if I said no, I would have dropped dead on the spot.
Right.
The voice's unstated implication was take responsibility or die. In that state of consciousness, I really believed it. Yes, I
Right.
take responsibility. The voice fell silent. After a while, I got to my feet and stumbled back into the house. The rest of the trip was relatively uneventful. Lots of somatic electricity and liquid plumber sloshing around in my head. A local FM radio station played a piece by Alan Hovhannes, Mountains and Rivers Without End. Powerful music to hear while on a psychedelic. By late afternoon, I drifted back into normal awareness again. I was very glad to be back. That night, I went to bed, somewhat washed out from the acid, but fully recovered and in consensus reality again. I'd been down for several hours. In fact, I had a dream. My machete was in front of me, hanging suspended in a pure void of infinite darkness. Etched on the blade were Hebrew letters in living fire. I am not Jewish and I don't know Hebrew, but I can recognize those letters and differentiate them from Sanskrit or Greek, for example. The machete disappeared and only the fiery letters remained suspended in the void. Then they began to move and reform themselves in the Roman alphabet to spell Sephiroth in fire. Then they disappeared and only the void was left. I awoke, my heart pounding anxiously. Why was I afraid? I got up and walked around the house. What did Sephiroth mean? I looked it up in Webster's Third New International Dictionary. No such word. This was the most powerful dream I'd ever had, a once-in-a-lifetime kind of dream. It was a bona fide dream and not an out-of-body experience, which is quite different. It was easily as numinous as my encounter with the voice, but unfortunately, I didn't know what it meant any more than I knew what I had taken responsibility for. It was to be at least 2 weeks before I got a clue. I was aimlessly browsing in a Santa Fe bookstore. I saw a book with a title like Dictionary of Occult and Mystical Terms, something like that. Aha, maybe here I can find out what Sephiroth means. I turned to the proper page. Sephiroth, the 10 emanations of God in the Jewish Kabbalah. I was stunned. I had heard of the Kabbalah and knew it was some kind of Jewish mystical system, but that was as far as my knowledge went. How could my unconscious psyche come up with that information that I had never consciously encountered in my life?
Right.
Needless to say, I obtained some books about the subject. I forgot the reading sequence now, but Dion Fortune's The Mystical Kabbalah and A Practical Guide to Kabbalistic Symbolism stand out in my mind as particularly seminal text. Without trying to explain the intricacies of Kabbalistic philosophy, of which there are many, I discovered that my machete voice adventure corresponded to the 17th path on the Tree of Life. This path is called a path of choice. The crossroads of life meet here. Do you take responsibility?
Right.
The Tarot Arcanum, symbolically connected with this path, is the Lovers. And the Hebrew word letter for the Lovers is Zayin, which means sword, a machete. The drug ergo is also closely associated with this path, and LSD is an ergo derivative. That's a fair amount of synchronicity compressed into an event, which is still not totally clear to me, but I am apparently in good company. Years after my Kabbalah trip, I found this observation concerning LSD therapy in Stanislav Grof's book, Realms of the Human Unconscious. He is describing here how others under the influence of LSD have had similar experiences to my own.
Interesting.
Individuals unfamiliar, this is a passage from that book. Individuals unfamiliar with the Kabbalah have had experiences described in the text and have demonstrated a surprisingly familiarity with Kabbalistic symbols.
Right.
And here's the lesson, his lesson. It was this experience which finally convinced me that I was somehow involved in an ongoing inner process.
Mm-hmm.
I eventually accepted the concept that the conscious, quote, me, was but a portion of a greater reality which was unfolding itself from what I perceived as my own unconscious psyche.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere within this undifferentiated unconscious was a separate intelligence, able to manipulate information superior to anything I knew here in space and time. I didn't come to these conclusions immediately. Of course, it took several years for the hypothesis to fully congeal.
Wow.
It's a good one.
That is good. That's interesting.
I love the, for one, how fucking cool would it be to find that machete in a junk store?
Right.
And what did he say was the saying that was engraved in it? I'm looking back. Oh yeah, it was Mexican for nothing in the world is true that meets the eye.
Right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. But I was laughing when you were telling the story because you know that I accidentally got stoned. I accidentally got stoned recently, and
you got dosed.
And yeah, none of those. That didn't happen. That would have been cool. Something spiritual. That would have been great.
Well, what did it? What did happen? Any profound insights?
No, because I'm old and I was shocked that I was stoned. Because I ate something and I thought I was going to go to sleep. So I was so shocked that I was trying to fight it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's never a good idea. You know what I mean?
You
got to ride it out. I was just trying to fight it.
I can't fucking imagine the panic attack I would have if I ate edibles at this point in my life.
So then it's like I probably wasted it, because I was just like, oh my God, I got to feel normal. Like, what do I do to feel normal?
Yeah.
But
that's the thing though. Sometimes out of that overwhelming anxiety and fear,
something happens, right?
Some profound insights, and you just have to hold on and go through it. I think of some of the times I had on psychedelics, and I pretty close to nervous breakdown a couple of times, I think.
Yeah, but I also remember being younger and having like really cool trips.
Oh yeah, that's
like really getting into it, and it's like all cool, and
yeah.
So it's like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I thought I took like a sleep aid or something.
Sometimes the edibles are so strong.
Oh my God, I thought I was crazy or something.
How long did it last?
Hours.
Yeah.
Well, days? I don't know. You know how time is.
Yeah.
Probably a couple hours. So.
That's all? I thought it might last.
Somehow I ended up asleep. I did end up asleep at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah.
But for a while, it was just like, oh my God, I'm so fucked up. What do I do? splash water, do things. I don't know. Yeah. Not the teenage dancing around to like cool music and looking at trees and stuff. Not that,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that. But yeah, profound stuff, right? Can happen.
Good.
Interesting. And now I feel like we're back. Like we got it. We knew how to do this. We're back.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
Do you have more? Or you feel are we good for?
Yeah, I got one.
Okay, let's do it.
I've been over the past month or so, I've gone down a fairy hole.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying.
That's our band name.
Yeah. I'm trying to read as much as I can.
Right.
Find about the fairies, and about a year ago, it's probably longer than that. I was looking through old copies on archive.com of the Flying Saucer Review.
Right.
And there was a case in here. Let me read this. It's 2 cases, and this was from like the 1976 one of the issues from 1976, and it was just this short clip of these 2 cases from Dunn, North Carolina, which is close to me.
Okay.
October 12th, 1976, Dunn, North Carolina. Tonley Barefoot, 8 years old, claimed to have seen a little man dressed in blue as he was playing in a cornfield. The next day, footprints measuring 2.5 inches in length and 1 inch wide at the widest point were found where Tonley said he saw the man. Okay, 2 weeks later, October 28th, 1976, Dunn, North Carolina. Miss Shirley Ann McCrimmon, 22, claims to have seen a bottle-sized man at 6:20 a.m. while she was returning home. While closing the door, she heard a noise outside as if someone or something were moving about the bushes. So she looked out. Staring back at her was a little man, brown in color. She was frightened but curious and watched it for several minutes. Then she grew bolder and moved. When she did that, the entity shined a very bright yellow light across her eyes. She screamed and the little man scampered away. So that's just a short little thing, but ever since I read that, I printed it out and saved it. I've fucking wanted to learn more about those cases. So I've searched for them everywhere.
Right.
You know, couldn't find anything. Well, a month or 2 ago, I got this copy of the book Fairies, Real Encounters with Little People by Janet Ward. Instantly fell in love with this thing. It is one of the best books I've ever read.
Right?
It's amazing. And so here I am on page the chapter Little People Around the World. Okay. On page 99, check this out. The next witness was an 8-year-old boy who in 1976 saw a little man, quote, not much bigger than a Coke bottle, near Dunn, North Carolina.
There you go.
Tonley Barefoot was alone and playing with a toy shovel in a cornfield. Looking up, he saw a little man watching him open-mouthed. He was wearing black boots, blue trousers, and a blue shiny top. Quote, the prettiest little white tie you ever saw, and a black German type hat. He ran off fast with a squeal like a mouse. Tonley found some small footprints and took his mother to see them. Others saw them too, including the managing editor of the local newspaper, Fred H. Boast, who said that the tracks were definitely those of Little Boots. Clear marks were easily discernible. I failed to count the number in the first set, but there were 14 in the second set, which was clearer than the first. Individual prints were 2.5 inches long and about 1 inch wide at the broadest point. Tonley's sighting was made on October 12th, and Boast reported that a fortnight later, on October 25th, 20-year-old, see, they've got the ages different, but 20-year-old Shirley Ann McCrimmon also saw a little man. He was either wearing a thin garment or was naked and light brown in color. He wore no hat, but he did wear boots. Fairies wear boots, Black Sabbath.
Right. That's one of my
she,
favorites.
I know. And she found a small footprint. Fred Boast found another. He commented, the strange part about the footprints were that they led nowhere in any of the locations where they were found. The ground was soft in both areas of the cornfield, yet in both cases, the footprints ended abruptly. Let me stop for a second. It sounds like this was in the same cornfield.
Right.
Yeah. The ground was hard where the footprints were found at the McCrimmon home, yet around the back where the little man was said to have disappeared, there was a garden area with soft earth. But here, no footprints could be found. Again, it was youngsters. Okay, that's the end of that. But yeah, I was so happy
to find it.
Yeah, and this is such a good book. I can't recommend it highly enough. It's amazing. The Fairies. It's yes, it's called Fairies: Real Encounters with Little People. I got a used copy for like $4 on eBay.
Right.
It's one of the best books I've ever read, and if you looked at my copy, I have post-it notes on almost every page.
I believe you.
And it's so good. And I'd also like to mention another book that I am ecstatic about. Zelia Edgar, who has had a YouTube channel for the past couple years or so, she talks about these cases too. And she put out her first book called Just Another Tinfoil Hat Presents. And it's
good.
It's amazing. It's one of the best paranormal books I've ever read. And her style, her sense of humor and her style make it that much better. But she talks about some of the famous cases that have been talked about a lot and some lesser known. But even with the cases like the Hopkinsville goblins and the oh god, anyway, the other cases that you already know about, she goes so in depth that it's
you find something.
There's something. Yeah, it's so both of those books I can't recommend enough.
Nice.
I love them.
And your little man story made me think of something, but it's like in the back of my head, so I'll dig it up for next time. It's you know how I was listening to Ferrum College a long time ago. Ferrum College interviewed like the elderly in Appalachia, like to get stories.
Yes.
And I was listening to some of the recordings and found a couple of really cool ones. But yeah, there was like a little person one, so I have to find that for next time.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with this subject right now, and so there'll be a lot of these.
and I'm not afraid to say that I saw a little man when I was little, but
I love it. Do you want to tell it real quick?
When I was little, like, how do I tell it? When I was little, like, one of my friends lived like on the next street over, but there was like a vacant lot that we could cut through to get to the next street instead of, going all the way around or whatever. Yeah. So we'd always cut through this vacant lot by the woods to get to her street or my street. Right. And one day we were coming back to my house in the middle of the day, and we saw a little man. But I just remember we saw a little man. He had a hat. I don't know what color. I'm not going to guess what color his clothes are because I don't remember it like that. You know what
right.
I mean? I do think he had a hat. we were staring at him, and like little kids boggled, like there's a little man,
Yeah.
and we decided to run to my house and try to get like a bucket or something. Like, what are we gonna catch this?
Yeah.
So we did
Yeah.
run to my house, but when we came back, we couldn't find him in the field.
Yeah.
But then it's like everybody else, it's like you just go on with life. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then if you're reading certain things or hearing about certain things, you'll be like, oh yeah, I think I saw a little man when I was little.
Yeah.
But like I never like did anything with that. You know what I mean? It's just something that happened.
Same here. Every profound weird experience I've had, it was the same thing. I
Yeah,
put
you
it out
just
of my
go
mind
on
for years, you know.
until for some reason something makes you
Yeah.
think of it.
Something makes you think of it and you're like, oh my God, that happened to me, you know. And then
But the only thing is when something makes you think of it later, that's when you're like, oh my God, like,
right.
right? I need to know more about this.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
it's weird.
crazy.
But it seems to be normal. It seems to happen a lot.
And we have another friend who saw a little person, but I can't get her to come on and talk about it yet. I'm still trying.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. So it's just like yours,
Interesting.
yeah. So yeah, and please tell us your little people stories.
Yes, we love it.
Yeah.
We love it. We've seen shit too. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's totally okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that Zelia Edgar book is fantastic.
Highly recommended.
Great job. Yeah, it's really good.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. That's
all right. All right. Let's wraps it up. We're back. We'll be back. We've had our break.
Yep. I'm good. I'm rested.
And we're digging up stuff. So, and we totally would tell other people's stories if they want to come on and tell it. Cool.
Yes.
If they just want to give us permission to share it, that's cool too. Absolutely. Whatever's comfortable. But we love it.
Yes, we can't get enough. I'll post something about it, and please send us your stories.
All right.
All righty.
All right. Good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.